So Eli is your coach.
Currently, yep.
Okay. Eli, she did not bring a gi. I don't know what you guys are teaching out there, but the fact is that I would imagine that you should bring a gi no matter where you are, especially if you aspire to be a true student under a black belt. But I'm just saying, whatever.
I mean, I barely wanted my brown belt, so I'm good. No.
Amber.
Michael?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, all right.
Asshole, that works.
I'm usually not that direct.
We can get right into the AC unit thing.
But that's your only note. What else are we going to talk about?
Yeah. I left my notebook, and I was thinking about what should I ask her. We definitely are talking about the fact that she called me an AC unit. So we've had some interesting conversations here, but thank you for coming to the Elite U and sharing your thoughts, and hopefully we get some cool video here soon. But today I kind of want to just talk to you about not only the AC unit stuff, but a little bit about your background and kind of what brings you to this level of proficiency, what you do with Ryan, and that type of thing. So can you kind of cover that?
Yeah, I'm one of those lifelong martial arts people. I started Kempo at age of 6 and migrated through different systems, Taekwondo, did Kung Fu and Tai Chi for a little bit. I've kind of had my hands in everything. But as I got older and got into high school, wanted to look for something a little bit more realistic, more geared towards self-defense and less about point sparring and forms and that kind of stuff. And stumbled upon Krav Maga in about 2004, 2005. It kind of served for me as a gateway into more combat sports. So that opened the way towards kickboxing and Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. And that's been my last, with some breaks for college, my last 10, 15 years or so has been kind of involved in that world.
So how far did you get with the traditional martial arts?
In Kempo, I was a rank away from black belt and moved away. And then Taekwondo, multiple degrees, black belt. I went through the premier martial arts system and got some rank there as well, black belts. I really like memorizing things, so it did fit me well.
Okay. Well, a lot of times I suggest for parents that are asking, what martial arts to get their children in. Traditional martial arts creates a foundation of respect, like through and through. In my opinion, more so than combat sports, because unless you have a school that is dedicated to their children's program and instilling the respect, the character, everything that usually you find in traditional martial arts, you may run the risk of having them focus too much on winning and too much on only respecting those above you. And it's not that it's a guaranteed thing, but that foundation, understanding what you're actually training, like that obviously serves you well. Did you do a lot of sparring up to that point? You talked about kickboxing, but
I wouldn't consider it now anyway, sparring through the traditional martial arts system.
Touch sparring.
Yeah, because it's point, it's in and out. And then, but I did start once I started going live. I realized the gaps that were created through that transition, and also some strengths, because I had 5 or so years of Taekwondo under my belt, going against somebody who's done a mixed striking system. Yeah, my kicks were, I could do something with that. So there were definitely some advantages, and then some things that needed to be honed. Once I started those arts, there was a lot more sparring and seeing where there was gaps and holes.
So yeah, there's a lot that can be said about the touch sparring or the hit and not get hit. I had obviously a traditional martial arts background, and we did more full contact sparring, and then I moved directly into actual point sparring, but my instructor never believed in points. And so, but his thought process was you should be able to hit them as hard as possible in combination and not be hit, right? And so that's basically the idea of striking arts, is to hit somebody, especially at angles that they're not seeing, and not get tagged, right? So isn't that something that kind of relates and passes on into those other combat sports, or do you just feel like it's dependent on where you're coming from?
I think each person is probably different in this regard, but for me, being told get hit, don't get hit, when I would get hit, it was like I took it a lot more personally because I'm not supposed to be getting hit. Rather than being told don't get hit cleanly or make it hard to hit you, so that they're missing more than they're hitting, or that they're catching parts of your body that don't matter as much, parts of your head that aren't going to put you on the ground. Being told like hit without getting hit when I would get in but get tagged, like it was like, oh, I failed, kind of thing. So I definitely think there is value into going in thinking like I'm gonna do my best to get my strikes and get significant strikes and impact and overwhelm them to where they can't hit me. But you also can't shut down because you did get hit and that wasn't the goal.
So you're saying you're a perfectionist?
I might have a little bit of that in me.
Yeah.
Which works out being a small person because you kind of have to be pretty good.
Yes. No, exactly. No.
Yeah.
You don't get the leeway that bigger people.
Well, that was instilled with me from traditional martial arts, I think, because I had my first instructor was very big. I mean, if he said your foot needed to be at a 45-degree angle, everything short of pulling at a protractor, like your foot needed to be right there, which doesn't exactly translate to combat martial arts because you shouldn't necessarily. Not everything's going to be perfect because things happen and it's chaotic.
Right.
But you have to understand what your goal is.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. My experience on it is you have these broad scope generalizations that you need to be able to perform and understand. And then as you become more and more skilled in that area, the difference between someone who is good and someone who is exceptional and who's an expert usually is the refinement of those basics. Like everything about them is just perfect, right? But you can't get to that point until you have that broad scope. If you focus on details way too early, you tend to box yourself in, right?
Well, and we were talking about, I mentioned seeing like really good instructors bringing in their significant others to train with them, and they would start overcoaching. They wanted every single little detail. Everything has to be perfect, but that's just not how you're not going to start that way because you'll never get perfect. You're not going to get those 800 components of the perfect straight punch that first day. Be happy that you got 2 of them, and now let's keep going.
No, it's a topic of conversation that we have had in group sessions, but instructors tend to forget what it's like to learn a new skill, right? It's like I think about all of these things, and it's natural for me. And it's like, and the average person can't. Like in jiu-jitsu, they talk about how somebody is 10 steps ahead of you. And in reality, as I've gotten better and better, I realize that it's like, no, I'm just one. It's just the fact is that you can't catch up, right? And the thing is that, but for me to try to push that onto a loved one who's just starting is, I've always had the problem with the parent that stands off to the side doing this, and then the child just cannot perform because you're like, dude, like, get out of here. Like there is no ability for them to have fun.
Well, and the parents are the parents usually, for my case at least, I teach a lot of kids classes. The parents typically don't train, and they're just repeating what I'm saying. And I'm like, okay, I get that it makes perfect sense for you because I just said it, and now you just tell them, and they're supposed to, but that's not really how it works. And yes, I'm telling them these things, but I can see a small improvement, and that counts.
Right.
Like, yes, I told them all to keep their hands up, and your kids' hands are still here, but that's so much better than when they were out over there, like I'm taking that right now. And then next class, I'm going to get them higher and closer or whatever. Yeah. But parents don't see that a lot of times.
Yeah. It's a progression, and you have your own little goals. You have the parents that are basically living through their child's potential. They may not have lived up to their own potential, but they think that their child is the next, whatever. Do you have that? We always did. I trained a lot of the military families for free, and so we would get all these personalities in them, and that was a real big one. I was just like, dude, you can't even do what you're asking your child to do. You would break under that stress, but for some reason you think that, so
Yeah.
but,
I'm a big fan of asking parents to parent. Like, you get to sit on the sidelines and tell your kid, great job, and keep going and like have a great time with that. And I have to, tell them what they did wrong and help, but you just get to be the parent for a second. Let me coach them. Let me do my job that you have given me money to do.
Right.
And you just be there and support them and help them through, whatever crisis that they go home with that I don't get to see. Because I can only do so much when something happens on the mat, and I can teach them some coping mechanisms, but and I think anyone who trains knows this, like when you go home, you have thoughts in your head and you have an internal dialogue that you have to manage as well. And I think it's a parent's job to help the kid through that,
Right.
And make it positive.
Yeah. Well, all of the lessons that you're teaching in your class should be reinforced at home. And that's usually where the issue comes from. Like you're not fixing whatever is lacking at the house. You are just reinforcing good habits. And as long as that's good across the board, you see great development. So you went to traditional martial arts, then you sought something more realistic. You did state that you went to college. Was that for something that relates to the subject, or should I?
Not even a little bit. Well, economics and accounting.
Okay. So that works great for your current position.
It's helped a bit. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a cheat code. So then you started doing what combative sport first? So was it all at once?
It feels like all at once. Krav Maga definitely came first, and then the people around me that were instructors as well kind of brought me into Jiu-Jitsu, and they had a small kind of kickboxing program as well. And I'm sure Ryan beat this horse to death, but in Krav Maga, and you learn how to strike and how to use your body and be aggressive and things like that, but you don't actually learn how to fight. You just know these moves and stuff. And then you're supposed to touch hands and try to do those to somebody else who also knows those moves. Right. And there's a pretty big disconnect. And so that was frustrating for me for a long time. But I did Krav Maga and Jiu-Jitsu and essentially kickboxing in high school. Went off to college, and I'd come home and train every once in a while. And I actually moved for a job after college, and it happened to be a mile away from one of Ryan's training centers. Okay. And kind of stumbled into a more realistic world of Krav Maga and the clinch range.
Right. So the kickboxing, was that, so just being experienced in the communities, I can think of multiple versions of kickboxing. Some not as combatively fit as others. So could you explain a little bit what you did?
So kind of more towards how to fight. So the psychology, setting up techniques, setting up strikes, making angles, those kinds of things. Usually like glove drills, short drills with another person, and then usually some live sparring at the end.
Okay. So there was, right. Yeah. So there was,
and you bring up a good point, because there are plenty of people that walk around saying they box or kickbox, and
it's basically Taibo.
Yeah. You are really good at hitting the air. Congratulations.
Yes. Then there's those that hit the air and they don't even hit a bag. And you're like, there is a difference in hitting something that is actually moving towards you. Anyways, so moving to that, sparring, not, I'll just say it, sparring as a female is going to be something that is difficult for any coach to try to push through. I have found that there is some strategies to do that. Like you can build a female oriented class, have multiple females, and somebody kind of brings you in. I've also seen females that are just determined to become part of that community. And so they don't need to have maybe a support system or whatever. It's just the fact of doing sparring drills with other guys sometimes, or a lot of times you don't have someone that is sized up with you. How was that process? Was there a lot of females in the class, or?
Yeah. So for me coming up, there weren't a lot of females that I can recall. There might be one or two on occasion, but there was a strong female leader in the community.
Okay.
And there were people in the community that I felt that had my back.
Mhm.
So I never really, and maybe it's because I kind of lived in that environment. I never looked around the room and was like, oh my gosh, I'm the only female. What am I doing here?
Right.
But I would look around the room and I'd be like, oh, I'm the only female. Okay. Like, let's fucking go. Like I'm gonna show you that I can do something.
Yes.
But I've realized later in life that I was lucky to be in an environment that I was comfortable with people and felt that they supported me and had their back.
And that's a big thing, isn't it? It's like the environment, feeling safe, knowing that you're not going to get hurt. You don't have to deal with those that have an ego. Like if a female tags you, then I'm not clocking you, in retaliation.
Yeah.
But that's a big thing to push across when you're trying to learn a skill like kickboxing and sparring and movement and taking shots, even if they are not at full blast, which they should never be in sparring, at least in my opinion. The thing is that that's a tough pill to swallow to walk into. Like if you go into a boxing gym or a kickboxing gym and you see these guys moving around and you may not know their skill level, so you don't know why they're at the intensity that they are, or you're a parent and you're like, hey, I would like to get my daughter who's 15 into this type of class. Like, is there any type of suggestion or advice that you would give to kind of like replicate your success?
Yeah, I think it's important to try out different places and trust that woman's intuition or gut instinct. Pay attention to who's around and who's in classes. And I mean, when I started kickboxing and jiu-jitsu and Krav Maga, it was 2004. It was still not very popular,
Right.
and there weren't a lot of women. I don't think that's so much the case now. So if you do walk into a school and there are hardly any women, like that might be something to take into consideration. And it might be the night. I'm not saying that it's an absolute red flag, but it's information to take in and realize. The biggest thing for me was conversation, was talking to people. And I think that's missing a lot now because we internalize, as a society, well, that guy, when I touched hands with him, I felt like he was trying to take my head off.
Right.
Well, did you talk to him? Did you tell him you felt like he was going hard? Because if he had barely touched you, you'd also be like, well, that dude's, a douche. And he was too afraid to go with me and he's not helping me.
Right.
So you have to have those conversations. And I'm not 100% sure. I think if I wouldn't have that conversation with that exact person, I would have it with somebody at the gym. Like, why did that dude go so hard? Or, why did he go so light? Or, what am I missing?
So did you have multiple gyms to go to and to feel out? And
yeah, I trained across some different places. And again, lucky enough to know people who trained at these different places as well. But mom with a 15-year-old should be going in, even if that mom's not going to commit to training, which probably be okay. Try out a class with your daughter, and especially on the mindset of you're going to have your kid go into a predominantly male environment and, male dominated industry and sport, and have her get uncomfortable and try a class and get close to people. Like you should go ahead and do that too and experience it. And it's important to do things like that and be uncomfortable.
Right.
But it's important to set the example as well.
This isn't just for females or daughters. I get a lot of questions about, I would like to start martial arts, or I would like my family to start martial arts, and what are the things that I should look for. I've run multiple schools. I plan on never doing that again. For me,
but it's so much fun.
It's rewarding. There's a lot
to reward.
But there is also a lot to be said that you get locked down to an area, and when you try to find your passion, it's sometimes not tied to the thing that people think it is, right? But anyways, this isn't about me. This is about you. But what happens is people ask, or they'll send me these schools, and they'll be like, is this a good school? Or, this is a good school. And I find that it's very, very difficult to answer that question because I don't know any, even if I know where their background is or I have contacts about that person, I have no idea
what it's like to be in that environment.
Correct. Like I know you and I know Ryan, and I can be like, hey, I know them and they probably run an amazing school. But
Yep.
I also know that the likelihood that you are the only influence to that student is like zero. Like the fact is that there's so many other factors applied. And one of the things I tell them is, hey, just go from school to school. Every school usually has some sort of trial.
Yep.
And you're supposed to use that. And if a school, and I don't know how you feel about this, I'm just going to say it so that we can get it out there. That way you can't influence me. I tell them you should probably stay away from any school that tries to stop you from exploring your options. If they are like, hey, don't go to this school or that school, and it's not something that's based on safety, and sometimes even if it is, like, you don't have to actually participate, but you should show up. You should shake hands with the instructor. You should have a conversation. You should feel some sort of family atmosphere at that place, because the fact is that yes, you're there for skills, but you're also there to enjoy yourself. And if you can't enjoy yourself, there's no way that you're going to be there for an extended period of time. So you are also not going to know if that feeling that you got is because it's the first place you went to, so like, I get students that would come into my academy and they'd be like, I love this place. And, you're involved and everybody was really helpful. And, I want to be here. And I'll be like, look, I really want you to go somewhere else. At least try somewhere else.
Mhm.
I want you to be here because you want to be here, not because this is the first place and you don't realize that this is how everyone is. And invariably what happens is you would get that student to come back and they'd be like, well, not only did I enjoy this place, but you lied. It was not the same way
It's not
every
the same
single
other
place,
places.
anyways. So is that how you respond to new students and new families? Is there different advice that you would give as they come in? Because you guys run a different kind of school. Like it's not just
one thing.
Yes.
Right. It's similar. We want to know their why. We want to know their reasons for being there, what their goals are. And we want to be honest whether we can help them with that.
Right.
Because we've got a lot of families and professionals and everybody looking to keep their nose in the same place and have their face the entire same color that it was the day before. And if you want to go like be a UFC fighter and be beaten down every day, like you're probably not going to enjoy it here. And so we'll be honest with people to the extent of what it is they want, but also encourage them like to try out some classes and see how they feel and gauge for themselves if this is a good environment for them, and honestly let us feel if they're a good fit for us too. It goes both ways. Because if that dude didn't tell me he wanted to come in and bang, but then he comes into class and knocks somebody out, and we have to tell him, hey, that's not what we're doing. You need to go lighter, and then doesn't care and goes to the next person and hits him hard. Like, hey, look, if you want to hit hard, okay, but this is not going to be the place. Like, you need to go. So
as an instructor, it's your job, or as a school, it's your job to protect your students, not
Absolutely.
just absorb new students.
Yep. Yeah. Because that guy coming in every Tuesday night at 6 and knocking people out means people are going to start catching on. Like, well, I don't want to have to work with that dude, and he's going to hurt me, and so I'm just not going to come to that class. And so now they don't renew their membership because they can only come one day a week, not two or whatever. You're going to lose a lot more from that one person.
And what I've found is even worse than that is like-minded people attract like-minded people. So what happens is it's not just that one guy. That guy brings another bruiser and another one. And then you realize I'm not even enjoying teaching these people. I have definitely sent individuals to other schools because their priorities and our priorities didn't match. Your fighters are always going to make up like 2% of, like at max, of your entire school, right? And the thing is that as long as they're respectful, they can stay. The moment that they start affecting the larger community, the moment you have to start wondering, because sometimes their selfish goals tend to get in the way of safety, an environment that's professional, all this other stuff. So you and Ryan run two schools? Where are they located, and is there a difference between them?
Yeah, so we have one school in Gastonia, which is more of the one. I'm definitely there a lot more. He's mostly there a bit more, and then the other in Charlotte, which is a much bigger population. A lot of people who have moved there. That was where I ended up. I was raised in Florida, went to school in the mountains in North Carolina, and ended up following a job down to Charlotte, which happened because my friends from years prior followed jobs down to Charlotte. And so it just kind of attracts people who are kind of getting started in life. So it's a very different demographic than when I moved over to Gastonia. And it's, in Gastonia, you're gonna figure out where you're supposed to go because they're gonna tell you to turn by the old Target. And I'm like, I moved here a month ago. I don't know which one's old or where that was,
Landmarks don't help.
Right. Yeah, that doesn't help me. And then, the road name has changed 5 times by the time you get to Gastonia from Charlotte. So they're like Franklin. And I'm like, what? And they're like Wilkinson. I'm like, what? 74. Oh, okay. So they're very different. They're very different schools. And as such, very different environments and atmospheres when you walk in.
So you both teach at the schools? Do you just jump around, and that's based off of schedule, other instructors? Is there a primary focus at one versus the other, or is it just completely down the middle? Doesn't matter if you showed up to this one or that one, you're getting the exact same focus. Not to
that's like
highlight.
Moderately a loaded question.
No,
I'm a little.
That's why I'm here.
I guess I'm more biased towards Gastonia because I have a lot more ownership of the programs there.
Still love Charlotte.
I still love Charlotte. I love Charlotte people. I love the Charlotte schools. I love running the Charlotte classes. But like the kids program is pretty much entirely mine in Gastonia. Right. And because a lot of those kids, their parents are also taking fitness and training classes. Yeah. Like, there's a spillover, across the board for that. I teach a lot of the jiu-jitsu classes as well. So I miss a group of people, and I, see them as I pass by, and meet them as I can. But like I'm very much entangled with what the kids program is doing and where it's going and its potential and all of that.
Right. So do you have any insight that you can think of right now where both schools increase their female population, or their focus on something more particular to, what you would influence more than anything? Just mainly because as I've run schools before, it's a focus point where you're like, you want competent female instructors to run classes. Some burly guy telling a female, like, this is how it is, usually doesn't go as well as somebody who's a female that looks like a female showing, classes to females. Like, so yeah. Is there like a strategy where you guys kind of like pick that up, or is it just
being where we are now, established with about a 50-50 student population, men to women, with strong female coaches running classes? That's how you continue it. You keep female coaches running classes. You keep a good atmosphere that makes everybody feel comfortable with the environment they're in. Building that is like, because it's so easy to say, okay, well, you need a head female coach, and then but where do you find that? Where do you build that? How do you build that if you don't have the women around
exactly.
you?
That was my next question. Yeah. How do you build that culture so that they are attracted to your school?
There is probably at least a woman at a school, right? If you have 0 women at all, you might have to do something a little bit different. You might have to start with like, this is just a women's only class. This is women's only gym, and start getting people in, leading them over into co-ed type classes, and then insert this next step, which is having conversations. Because a lot of times you miss something. And even as a woman, I miss things, but like, you don't realize that there's no trash can in the bathroom, and that their toilet paper is always out. And so like, it's already immediately just off-putting to be there, and you don't want to spend any extra time, or like, and that seems like a silly little thing, but that is a big deal.
The priorities of men
are different than,
yes, exactly.
And ultimately it's already so daunting to go into a gym to do what the things we're teaching, whether it's jiu-jitsu or Krav Maga, or even just a general fitness class in a group of people. Mm-hmm. And I found that especially true post-COVID. People are still a little put off around being in close quarters with people, despite 20-foot ceilings, air purifiers, temperature checks, like it's still just, we're all kind of getting used to it again. But it comes down to conversations. Like, this is a daunting thing. If you're already just put off because the bathrooms are gross and they smell bad, and like the floors look grungy, or whatever it is that might catch you up, you're gonna make it even harder on yourself than it has to be.
Well, that's also not just a female class. That's family.
That's anything.
Right?
Yeah.
The mom comes in, she looks at the place, she's like, I don't want my child to be at this place. This place
It's culture.
smells.
It's culture. And if you have this grungy, grimy culture, you're gonna attract more grungy, grimy type people. And there are those women you might get, but that's going to be the smaller subset. So if that's what you want, okay, but everything about your facility is saying something without you even realizing it.
So don't be gross. That's the lesson that I heard.
Highly recommend. Yeah.
Right there. Okay. So you and Ryan, I saw that rock. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No.
But I saw you at Blade Show. That was not there. I was happy that wasn't there.
Yeah. You didn't miss that completely.
Yeah, I teach situational awareness and all this other BS wording, and I'm like, I swear that thing wasn't on her hand at that time. So how influential was he to your development in training and your not seriousness in training, just the fact of his entire life is focused on that. Your desire to have realistic training and being capable may be there, but that's a completely different thing, right? So tell me about that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to say none at all. I did it all on my own.
Okay, well, that was quick.
Yeah, and then we're
we'll just
good.
move
Wrap
on
it
to the
up.
next,
So yeah.
Answer.
When you're in a spot, for the most part, you think like, okay, I can see where I have progressed and I'm better than I was before. It's really hard to imagine, like, there's a next level. It's really hard to see yourself there. Like, how do I get there? And so it was a big thing for me within kind of like the stand-up fighting space to find that next level through Ryan and Fit to Fight.
Right.
Because Jiu-Jitsu, as you know, has a very interesting progression and learning curve.
Yes.
And I hadn't seen that in a while because a lot of moves and techniques come simple to me. You can sit here and tell me 20 things to make something happen, and I can remember those 20 things and do them. Mm-hmm. So that was never a big deal to me. And then when I started touching hands more, and all of a sudden those 20 things, one, were in my head, and two, I couldn't make them do them. I was like, what in the world?
Right.
How do you possibly get from I know the moves to I can do the moves? And I really didn't see what to do. I had no idea how to handle that myself. And running across Ryan and his programs that connected that were a huge part of me feeling me being more confident in my abilities and understanding not just the moves and movements, but how to apply them and where they work and where they don't.
Right. So he was a mentor that showed you that next level. Mm-hmm. Was it hanging around him during classes? So a lot of times I'll have instructors shadow me. Mm-hmm. They may not be teaching, they may not be going through, maybe they've gone through the class prior to. As you know, as an instructor who's created your own curriculums and run them, there's a huge difference between going through and watching and running that class, right? So you learn so much at each of those different levels, right? Yeah. So was there times where you're like, I think I'm good, and then you like watch from an outside and you're like, that person didn't do this, and then Ryan goes, well, you guys have similarities, like
I think the biggest thing for me was you can take a class and listen to the instructions so that you can do what they're saying, and then but sometimes, especially once you get to a certain level, you don't have to listen to figure out what you're supposed to do because you know what you're supposed to do, and you can start listening to how they're wording it, how they're saying it, what they're doing, but maybe not saying.
Right.
So kind of bringing in the other parts of learning, and that was a big deal for me. But I'm also obsessive with this stuff, and I would take courses over and over and over again, and
I
just kind of
get at that at all.
No, yeah, that perfectionist side.
Yeah,
It's
you
not
hide it well.
there. I have a great poker face too. Let me tell you.
Yes. Actually, Ryan told me that. Like, he was like, "Look, if you don't like you, you're gonna know." The idea that teaching is an essential part of learning is usually developed in traditional martial arts. Like, it is something that you immediately jump into. Like, you get promoted, whether you believe in the peacock colors or whatever, you get promoted to like yellow belt, and it is your job to train white belts, right?
Mhm.
And so you start the mastery of that early on. Do you guys implement that in your training? Like, is that part of that, or is it something where it's like, look, I'm just here to do self-defense. I don't need to teach.
For adults, you're talking adults. So I think you could teach this if you wanted to, but I don't think it's something you should necessarily force on somebody. But um, like I can teach you by coaching this person,
Right.
and so I do that a lot, and recognize who picks it up, because sometimes you're working with somebody and you're overcoaching them, and I'll come by and I'll be like, let me see it. Oh, that was great. Yeah, keep your hands up a little bit higher. We're good to go. And you can think, oh, she doesn't care right now if his elbow's in, if his foot is back, if his heel is up, and you're like, oh, okay, just go. But sometimes I'll do that and I'll walk away and I hear you go, yeah, that was good. Okay, so keep your elbow in. And I'm like, hey, I got this, I promise. Like, he's good right now, and then you're like, oh, okay, now you get it. So, some people, everybody learns in a different way. For the most part, I try to give you a chance to learn for yourself, because you're going to understand it a lot better that way than if I just come up and say, hey, don't do that.
Well, of course. And the concept of doubling or tripling or reducing in that capacity your learning time because you're teaching or helping others. Is that something that is only set for those that are past certain curriculum or a certain level, or is that something that you guys you want people to do? Like, I learned this, and teach student B this because
you can definitely learn a lot more about yourself teaching, whether you know the technique or not. You can learn that by trying to teach it to somebody else. And so I do think, there's some benefit in that. It's not for everybody. Some people are just like, no, I'm just kind of here to let out some stress and aggression. And I don't have the perfect choke defense, but I'm not looking for the perfect choke defense. And so, you need to kind of respect people's goals, but also if you want to know if you really know it, trying to teach it to somebody is a good start.
Yeah, it's the difference between deep diving a subject matter and
yeah.
just knowing the surface level.
Right. I know I can repeat the words that my coach has said, but now when I'm telling this other person and they don't interpret it right, or they do something wrong, I don't really understand. I realize I don't really understand it.
Right.
Or maybe you do find out that you understand it better because you recognize what's going on or not. And for kids at higher levels that have been through the program a while and have heard the same things and have heard me coach a while, I do get them in front of a group to try to coach others.
Right.
One, to see, do you really understand what you're doing, and can you articulate it? Two, the benefit of being in front of a group and speaking to your peers. There's a huge benefit to doing that now when you're 10 versus the first time you're in front of a group is.
Yes, no, there's the lessons that are learned, the development of their childhood basically can greatly benefit that. You studied Jiu-Jitsu. How long have you been rolling?
Yeah, probably started in 2005. Pretty consistently through high school. Not much through college. Again, I would just kind of come home and train when I was home. And then it took me a few years out of college to kind of pick back up into it and fall in love with it again. Yeah.
And I don't want to, because I know lineage and rank don't matter, but who are you under, and what rank have you pulled up to?
I'm a little bit of a hodgepodge. So when I started, I was training in Florida under Rob Kahn, who's a Hoist Gracie black belt, I think the first in the state. And so I got my blue belt through that. So under, I guess, a Hoist Gracie lineage. And then started training more up in North Carolina. Got my purple belt through Jeremy Arell. and he's out in North Carolina, black belt, and has been there in South Carolina actually. And then my brown belt back through Eli Knight, who's a Hoist Gracie black belt.
Okay. So Eli is your coach
Currently, yep.
Okay. Eli, she did not bring a gi. I don't know what you guys are teaching out there, but the fact is that I would imagine that you should bring a gi no matter where you are, especially if you aspire to be a true student under a black belt. But I'm just saying, whatever.
I mean, I barely wanted my brown belt, so I'm good. No. You got to use your mind to fight. You don't bring the gi. Nobody can
so that
grab
brings
you and
us
strangle you with the gi.
That brings us to the.
I already
AC
beat
unit.
everybody.
She said that she didn't want to bring her gi because she knew that I was here and that I would want to roll, and she didn't want to roll with an air conditioner. So as I'm trying to break this down, all things are done on purpose, right? So air conditioner, large, rectangular, heavy. Makes a lot of noise. You have to pour Clorox in it every year or else it gets gunked up. There's just a lot of mean things that just
Really
comes right out of that.
expensive to fix.
Yes.
Yeah.
What are you
You
saying?
got to edge
I'm
around
high
it.
maintenance.
Yeah.
That's messed up.
That's it. That's the only part of the HVAC unit, of course, that I'm referring to is how high maintenance you are.
Interview's going very well for me right now.
Oh, I've thought of other heavy boxy things if you wanted
let's
to.
not go down that path.
Oh, okay. All right.
If you were to give advice to those that want to start on that path of self-defense, protecting their family, what would it be?
I mean, getting to the point where you want to learn self-defense and protect your family is already a huge step.
Mhm.
So they should start out pretty proud of that fact. I mean, a lot of people don't get to that point. Or, they decide that they want it and they need it, but they don't get through the door.
Right.
It takes years sometimes to actually get through the door. But yeah, I mean, kind of like what we talked about before. Do some research, find some schools, go out, get your feet wet, try some classes. Yeah, like you said, pretty much all gyms should have some kind of trial thing. You're not just going to walk in, sign a membership, and get stuck there. And if that is the case, that's probably a red flag. It's so hard because you want people to keep an open mind and try to think for themselves and decide whether what the instructor's saying makes sense to them. Mm-hmm. But at the same point, when you don't have knowledge of a situation or whatever, it's really hard to know what you don't know, kind of thing. I think you kind of have to know that you're not going to hit the nail on the head every time, and that's okay as long as you're continuing to keep your mind open and thinking about things critically. Not to the point where every 5 seconds it's a question, but that you're not walking in the door, doing the things they say, and then walking out. Because you can do self-defense that way. Mm-hmm. And probably plenty of people do. They come in, they scan their little card, they're feeling good, they do their 50 minutes, they hit a pad, and that's all they're doing. They defend some chokes, and that's all they're doing in their head. They're in an environment where you're supposed to do that, soft, cushiony stuff under your feet, and then they leave, and that's it. Yeah. Or you go in, and not that you have to be, high level every time, but you recognize, okay, I'm constantly going between my office and my car at 7:00 at night. And when the time changes, it's going to be dark and somebody might try to grab me. Okay. Now when my partner comes up behind me and grabs me, I'm thinking about that parking lot and doing my strikes and getting to my car or a weapon or, whatever comes next back in the office building and extrapolating those situations into your real life.
Right. Well, that makes sense. Your background, as well as a number of people that I know, has a similar thing. And one of the questions that I ask is the thought process that anything is better than nothing, mainly because a lot of people start off in what they would consider the inefficient way of doing it. Mm-hmm. And there's something to be said about learn from my mistakes, but at the same time, your path led you to where you are now. Yep. So you really can't fault the arts that kind of brought you in this direction. You are unique in certain ways, and I understand that. But do you fall under that thought process? Like just get out there, just start doing something, and find your way as you wade through the.
I've never kind of extrapolated out to that level, but I would say so. Kind of like, in a situation, the best thing to do is the right thing, and then the next best thing is pretty much anything at all, right? So especially if your goal is self-defense, get out and do something, but with some educational decision making behind it, because it's not truly like, I could go start playing basketball and be like, you know what? When I try to throw, I can't play any sports that just, let me just go ahead and say that right now. Like, so don't judge me on this. Okay. Well, when I have to use my hand-eye coordination, it's like eye gouging or something, but,
that's really far.
Right. That's a pretty far reach. Like you have to, you do have to kind of take into consideration what you really want and what the main goal is.
I guess the question is, as long as they get to that destination, it doesn't matter where they're starting on that windy, slippery road.
If you can have an open mind and learn from things, whether it's what not to do, like learn from extrapolation. Like, I saw this person do this and like, wow, that looked like a really bad idea, so I'm going to not do that. Or I took this one class and the guy said he was going to teach me how to defend myself in 5 minutes. And I realized like, that's a bad thing now. Like, as long as you're going in and you're willing to learn something from it, even if it's, that takeaway, then yeah.
My, one of my mentors used to say, don't curse the crooked road. And it's something that I realized that over time, you realize that people can receive mastery or expert level in something. It's not exactly common sense that that's exactly what you're doing. Talking about the background though, was there something that happened or was a catalyst for you to seek more realistic self-defense, or was it just the fact that you went through and logically you were like, this doesn't make any sense? So was it a steady progression, or was it something that you were like, I got close to this area and I'm lacking, so I must seek out a different way, right?
I wouldn't say there was any kind of one impetus. I did feel like as I kind of progressed and got older and was doing forms and weapons and stuff, I felt, I don't want to say silly, but I was like, okay, I feel pretty cool being able to swing my bow staff around and my sword and whatever. Like, and it's cool and there's value, but I don't like, this doesn't apply to somebody confronting me and in my face and that kind of thing. And so there was that in the back of my head, I think. But some of it was just being around the right people and talking to people. I had a good friend that I would see at different, I did the Taekwondo tournament circuit kind of thing. And I had a friend that was from my area that I'd see pretty regularly there. And one day she was like, why don't you, she was talking to me, dad's talking kind of thing. She's like, why don't you come like check out my school? Like, yeah, we have this kids competition program, but we also have Krav Maga for, once you're this age or whatever. And so it was that willingness though, because I knew Taekwondo. I'd been in there for a while. I had success in the tournament circuits and that kind of thing. And but it was that willingness to be like, okay, well, let me go try something else and see how that goes.
So as you got older and matured more, your priorities shifted, right? So like what was satisfying at a certain point for your development was no longer there. You seeked out other things. I think that happens a lot with individuals. Like they find great success where they are, and the reasons that they are there is not why they started, and it may not be the reason why they move on to something else. And so last question is, and it's a real easy one. Like, people spend their whole life seeking this answer. So what is your why? What drives you? What makes you get up in the morning?
I'm
putting you on the spot.
No, that's a very simple question.
Zoom
it's
in.
Easy, really. Charmander is my why. like for me, I really enjoy getting people from like off the ground, from zero and going. Not that I don't enjoy helping people who have been indoctrinated in this life and who have been, spent years in the center get to their next level. But I really enjoy taking people who just haven't been there, that have this willingness, that have walked through the door, so they have their why,
Yes.
and helping them make that big first step into reaching it,
And making them feel comfortable and welcome in that world.
Yep.
And then
and being able to stand on their own when I'm not there, or
awesome.
as life changes.
It's not a bad line. So if they want to see you or Ryan or both, is there somewhere that they can go online? Where do they find you?
Fit2fight.com to see any courses and stuff we have coming up. My Instagram handle is probably the best for direct content for me, and a good amount of dog content too, at Amber Thighs, Amber Thize. But also at Fit to Fight Republic, they'll see plenty of both of us and our shenanigans.
Awesome.
My shenanigans that I have looped him into.
Awesome. And you'll find some stuff at eliteu.com. It was a pleasure. Thank you.